go. Let's see. I have to look at some things real quick here. Just make sure. All right, we all ready, everybody? All right, call to order the Garrison Board of Education regular meeting of January 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. All right, first order of business. Pledge of Allegiance. All righty, please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And one of the better things that we do this year is the presentations from high schools, and we are blessed, gifted to have a number of students here, a number of administrators, and board members from James I. O'Neill High School across the river. And we're looking forward to hearing what's going on at the high school and how the students are performing and their reflections and impressions. So I want to turn it over to you guys. You want to do this? Who's running things? Yeah, who's going for it? All right.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. So we have 4 students here who are incredibly hard workers and incredibly nervous because they have a midterm exam tomorrow. So we want to make sure that we let them come up first. So we'll let you ask some questions of them and give them a chance to speak to you, and then Ms. Milano and I will start with our presentation. So we have Isaac. You guys can all come up together. Isaac Walker, Adam Sharifi, Guy Sorbonne, and Valerie Mancuso.
Wow. Isaac, I remember Isaac.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's just everyone changes. They grow, they change.
Yeah, I've grown a foot since our 8th grade. I measured it. It's been a bit of a change.
What's that?
Yeah,
Does Duff's look smaller when you're in the building now?
yeah, I've been there since 8th grade also, so it's kind of strange. I remember not being able to touch the ceiling, but yeah, I think I can do it now, so it feels good. But yeah, I don't know. I'm Isaac Walker. I'm a senior. We're all seniors.
I'm Sharifi. Garrison.
Valerie Mancuso.
Yeah, we all do pretty different things, but they play basketball together, so that's pretty neat. And then I run, and then
I play
what are you?
softball.
Yeah. So we all do sports. Sports at O'Neill, I think, is one of the biggest pluses. Even though we're a really small school, about half of the students are from West Point. So if you're from West Point or your parents are from West Point, generally you're really athletic because they have lots of physical requirements. So our sports teams are really good. That's a lot of fun. I guess academically, Okay. So we have a class, I think, of 124. I'm ranked like 2, I think. I'm not sure where I'm going to school yet, but I'm looking at BYU, Stanford, and MIT, and I really feel like James O'Neill has prepared me really well for that with the college application process and with test prep. I think, didn't all of us do, or I think, yeah, we all did this SAT prep course that we heard about from O'Neill, or we took here, and I think we heard it from either Gus or O'Neill, but yeah, and I think that was really helpful. Yeah, and then classes. Personally, science is my favorite subject. I know that sounds super nerdy, but it's true. And Gus has probably, yeah, it prepared me so well. We have Mr. Keegan. He really preps us super well. I think we all did really good in freshman, like chemistry and biology and that kind of stuff. And from there, I feel like we have the right foundation. What do you think?
Yeah, science was definitely a plus going into high school. I love science too. I'm thinking about majoring in it. Oh, I am going to major in it in college, environmental biology. So Spanish, I think that was another big plus. Everyone talks about it really. Coming from Garrison to O'Neill, Spanish was one of the things that you felt extremely ready for. You just felt like you knew everything walking to O'Neill, and Spanish, the Spanish 2 classes. So yeah, Spanish was a major plus. Felt like I knew a lot in that class.
I would just like to say that 5 out of the top 10 ranked students are from Garrison. So I'm
Yeah,
not.
we represented.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty impressive, considering we made up a lot less of a percentage of the student body. My favorite class is history, so Mr. County was my favorite teacher. He's honestly the best, and I feel like not only him, but just all the teachers were so personable, and like I was always just able to go to them with anything, and so I just continued to do that throughout my career, in high school at least. So I thought that was really cool.
One thing about academics and one thing not about academics. Adding on to the Spanish thing. Are we on Spanish?
I did Chinese, actually.
Okay,
My
well,
mom was
not
like, you should do
Isaac.
Chinese, so I did that.
But us three are all in Spanish 5, which is a college level course, and like, I don't know about the other class, but I know half of my class is all Garrison students. And because like the Highland Falls kids didn't start taking Spanish until like 7th grade, and I know we started like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
I think we were the
So-
first class
Really,
to have
really good.
Spanish
Yeah.
like mandatory.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think
it took away our
So
third
that's
recess
cool.
of the day.
Somehow you remember that.
I think he's completely over it, no spite whatsoever. But, yeah, I remember, I think my older sister was able to actually take Chinese and Spanish and like skip some Spanish because Senor D'Antuano had prepared her so well. Like, yeah, Spanish at Garrison and science and social studies, and nothing's bad, it's all really good, but those are like the 3 top
Yeah, I agree.
subjects, I'd say. And then,
Something else to add. I love music, and I'm in select choir, so is Isaac.
yeah.
And I'm also in women's choir. And one thing that I wish I knew going into high school was like the audition process for select choir, because I wasn't sure. Like, we had to learn this really hard
So
song.
our select choir at school is very, very selective,
Yeah.
as says the name. But you actually have to learn an excerpt from Handel's Messiah and then perform it in like the first couple of weeks of school. And I only managed to get anything ready because my older sister had prepped me the entire summer leading up to it. So like, yeah, I guess
Yeah, I
It would've
found
been nice to
out
have a
like
little
a
more.
day. I had like a day to prepare it, and I was like coming from like here when we're used to singing like all in unison
Yeah.
and stuff. And I'm looking at this music, I'm like, oh my god, I wish I knew. So that's
Big jump.
something I wish I knew about for the summer, so I could have prepared. Because then I just tried out the next year. So for sophomore year, I was in select.
You're getting rushed. We've got another person joining you here. You want to introduce? It's okay. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Megan Lynn.
she's also in select. So,
Yeah.
yeah. We have how many
She's
people in
also in
select are
Spanish
from
five.
Garrison? We have a lot of people from Garrison in
Oh,
select
yeah.
too. So no matter how hard it was to get like the audition thing ready, we still made it. So
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you guys have any questions or?
So guys, imagine, close your eyes and imagine that you have a microphone, and a few feet away there's the principal of your school and the superintendent of your school, and maybe even a couple of members of the school board. And you can tell them what they should do to make O'Neill even better than it is.
I can go first. I am in a lot of sports and clubs and stuff, and I know for me it was tough to like have to choose one or like leave basketball early to go to mock trial, or leave youth and government to go to academic league or whatever. So I just, if it's possible, if there could be like set times for either a club, I know it's 2:45 to 15, whatever it is, but or like sports, set time for basketball, because there was just always there's so many different schedules that I had to keep track of, and they were always changing, they were never consistent. So if I had to do it all over again, I would just like to have a little more consistency with my schedule so I wouldn't have to leave early.
Yeah. With that, I think there's not much to improve on, honestly. Like James Ironale is a really, really good high school, and I think we're all really lucky to be able to attend. But the busing, I remember before I got my license, I used to miss the Garrison 345 bus by maybe 2 or 3 minutes, because most sports activities don't finish until about 4, and then wait 2 hours for the 5:45 bus, because both my parents were busy or I couldn't find another ride. And I know like the logistics of that are really difficult and probably expensive too, but maybe another bus in between, if possible, would be really nice, because those 2 hours were pretty boring. But
What about the start time? Too early? Okay.
I mean,
School?
Given the
11 a.m. would be really nice. I don't think that's really possible. Given,
Well, there's discussion, there's always this constant buzz about considering start times, right? In fact, I believe someone is going to a start time, to a seminar the area districts are discussing.
Yeah.
Where there's, I mean, what time do you guys get on the bus to come to the bus to get to the
I can
school?
speak. I wake up at 5:40 in the morning every morning to catch the bus, which comes at 6:20. So I catch the bus at 6:20. It's a long bus ride that goes to South Mountain Pass and then comes right back around to Garrison. And then it leaves the school at like 6:55, Garrison School at 6:55. Then we reach O'Neill about like 7:12, 7:15ish, so around that time.
And what's the start time, 7:30?
7:20.
7:20.
They usually get in at 7:09.
Yeah, I
7:09
do
to
early
7:12,
morning
that's
seminary on West Point as part of my church. So I have to wake up at 5:10 and then head out at 5:30 and then get to school. So like I haven't had to worry about buses as much and the start time. But yeah, 7:20 when I don't have seminary is always really early. But also I feel like sure if we push the start time an hour back, we're just gonna stay up an hour later, knowing that
It's
it
hard
is
to fit
later.
everything like after school also
Yeah.
because a lot of the sports and stuff take a lot of time after school anyway. So like pushing it back, I'm not sure how much that would really help.
Yeah.
It's like too much time to do homework and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
But also, I'm really cranky in the morning. So like first period, I'm just like not having it. And I have physics first period, so it's a little like rough sometimes. So I just have to get my coffee, to wake myself up. So like sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish it was an hour later. But then also we get out early.
It's
so.
important to have that level of self-awareness, you know, that whether you're a morning person or not. Do you guys have any questions for the crew here? I want to make sure that they get home at a decent hour.
Is there anything similar to David's question, but is there anything, but reverse it back to Garrison, think back to transitioning into high school, leaving 8th grade, is there anything you wish you had known? Is there anything you would tell current 8th graders? Is there anything that would make it easier?
Well, personally, I guarantee you a lot of stuff has changed from like now, from when we graduated from Garrison. But a personal thing for me when I got into O'Neill was with English and essay writing. Essay writing was not a main focus in 8th grade, I feel like, and I didn't have a lot of experience with essay writing. So when I got to 9th grade and we had to write essays, I was very all over the place and had to basically start all over again and learn how to actually write a proper essay. So I feel like essay writing was very important. It's a very important skill that you have to know going to 9th grade.
Yeah, I don't think the difficulty of freshman English, honors, or regents, especially with Mr. Luke, is emphasized enough. I think we had like 5 or 6 kids in my freshman class drop out within the first like 2 weeks because Mr. Luke's class is so hard that every other, that's still the hardest class I think I've ever taken by far. And sure, I had siblings who explained it to me, but there were a lot of people who got there and were just like, what's going on? So I think, I think they definitely need to be warned. I don't know, like, it's intense. Like, if you're not willing to put the work in, then you're not going to do well
Then go to hell.
at all.
Well, there's a predictor too. I mean, it's quite a predictor of how you're going to do in college is how you do in English. Especially in college, the predictor is first-year writing courses. When you go to college, you will take a first-year writing course, and it will be one of the more difficult courses you take. And it seems weird to have it first, but it's important. It's a good predictor of how you will perform throughout the rest of your time, especially in the liberal arts, humanities, social sciences, where you have to craft paper after paper. So it's probably a good thing. The stress of that is probably a good thing in the long run, but preparing you for that transition is important too, right?
Sorry to kind of dominate, but the math, I feel like my freshman year really I had a lot of trouble with just because although we do have the advanced course at Garrison, it's and it's Mrs. Fortini. We knew her as Miss A. She's a great teacher and all, but we went pretty slow, and so getting into high school with like geometry honors and mainly algebra 2 was a really big shock. And I feel like, yeah, I had to almost go over some stuff in algebra 1 to make sure I really had it down.
Did you double up on geometry and algebra 2, or
No.
you did?
Kind of wish I'd done that, but
You did geometry, then you did algebra 2.
Mhm. Yeah, so sophomore year, along with AP chemistry at the same time, which was a great idea, let me tell you. Yeah, but I don't know, and I'm not sure how much that can be, remedied. But our you guys remember our honors math class? It was
Yeah,
it was
we didn't
good,
go
but
fast.
it was really slow. And like when the regents came, yeah, we hadn't gone over some of this stuff, and it really, yeah, it was
It's
hard.
just like the basic thing. I don't like factoring. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me. I'm not
I
good
don't
at
know.
math.
I'm not exactly sure. It just felt, maybe it's just our year too. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was.
Let me ask you another question, just to transition a little bit here. Do you feel, do you have any interest at all being part of the Garrison community now that you're so much part of the O'Neill community? Do you feel like the Garrison school community? I'm saying, can you imagine ways that you could stay in touch with the community, with the school community, and sort of, is there any interest? Or do you feel like once you depart, you really got to be part of that community, not come back here?
No, I mean,
It's always gonna be a part of like.
Her life.
I don't mean the Garrison community, but this school.
No, yeah. Like I'm always gonna have like a special, I don't know, like attachment to the school because we were here for like, I don't know, how long? 9 years? Like that's crazy. And I'm surprised I haven't come back more often and visited. Like seeing everything now, I don't know, it's weird. Everything does come out stronger.
I don't know. Middle school wasn't a really good time for me. Tried to forget most of it. It's one of the reasons I don't come here a lot. So I don't know. I mean, I could try and get involved, but
It's a universal feeling, by the way.
Not the only one.
Not the only one who
Yeah.
tries to block out middle school.
yeah, I don't know. So a little bad memories there, but I'll try and get over it.
I'm thinking of like a Garrison alumni
Mhm.
group, or a way to give
That'd be awesome.
We're searching for a new superintendent, right? So a good question would be, is there a possibility for alumni to have a kind of forum to be able to speak to that kind of thing, so that we can hear your voice. Sometimes it's when you're living in the situation, it's very hard to have perspective on it, and you get a little distance. You're like, this could be done differently. I liked how they did it, but they could do it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Do you like that
I
idea?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my best friends are from here. I talk to them every day. So, like, for life. Yeah, I know not everyone, but.
No, definitely going into O'Neill, it's like you have that group of friends that you stick
Oh,
with.
yeah.
Like Garrison makes that strong bond between your friends. So like you have that group of friends sometimes that you stick with. I'm still friends with a lot of my friends from Garrison.
Something I noticed though was when like on the freshman boat ride, I was like, I think the only Garrison kid who didn't just stick with the rest of the Garrison kids, and so it was a good like 4 or 5 months before any of the Garrison kids like got out of their little Garrison groups, and now we're pretty like integrated. We have lots of friends from Highland Falls and West Point, but I feel like in some ways, sure, it's nice to stay with your old Garrison friends, but I don't think I talked to like any of you guys for like the first 2 or 3 months of high school. Well, I talked to Adam.
We do cross country together.
Yeah, and it was a good time.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I feel like I've gotten
freshman year
closer
was
with
just
all
like
the
a
Garrison
blur.
kids this year.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
Yeah.
I was so
Senior
close
year
them,
with
but-
like more time to focus on social life, because I didn't have one until I got a car, and yeah, I've been able to like grow a lot closer to the Garrison kids. So yeah, maybe that's important though to emphasize to the incoming freshmen, is that you don't need to be afraid of meeting new people or getting new friends, because I mean, sure, these people are some of my best friends in the whole wide world. We spent those 9 years together, but there are only 30 of them, only about 20 from O'Neill. You're not going to have like your best friends of your entire life just in that little sample size. Like, it's good to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different areas. It's one of the best things of meeting kids from West Point too, is they come from all over the country. So yeah.
I know for me though, like, 85% of my best friends went to different schools, so I still had to like find new friends, and I did. You know, obviously they turned out okay. But if these kids could just be if these kids just understand, like, you know, you guys are gonna have to make new friends. Yeah, I'm sure most of them aren't gonna go to the same school wherever it is.
It also just comes naturally.
Yeah, I don't think it's
making
gonna
new
be a
friends.
problem. But in terms of the alumni association, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still like kids in other grades that, you know, I used to be friends with and I haven't seen them for years. We used to be so tight, and now they're gone. So I think that'd be a great idea.
Did I know that your brother went to Haldane. Your siblings, are they all in the same school, or did they split up, or you know,
For
they choose to
me?
go differently, different places?
All Neil for me.
Yeah.
All Neil, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you Mateo's at Haldane,
Yeah.
right? And that's not an issue. You're happy with the distance.
I mean, I miss it, but
Is there any rivalry?
no, not really, not at all. It's tough for me though, because I see like kids, like some of my best friends have siblings in that grade, and they're like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm just like, "Dang, really not good." But yeah, no, I mean, it just he made the choice that was best for him.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I know the McKees, they're twins. Aurora's at Haldane, and then Solana's at O'Neill. And I've talked to Solana, we're friends, we're in the same calc class. She's also in select, she's from Garrison.
Yeah.
But yeah, she Aurora and she are still doing good. They're both living their best lives at their respective high schools. So yeah.
And I guess you guys are really involved in the music scene, right?
Yeah,
Did
we
y'all
do band,
Did
yeah.
y'all do
Yeah.
Ninja and all that?
Nisma?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
that was
First year not doing it because
Yeah.
you don't have to do it if you're a senior, and
Yeah.
it's great.
It's so really
It's
cool.
so
But you
nice.
did it when you were here.
yeah.
Yes.
That's
all
something that was
counted,
really
yeah.
cool too. That
Did
prepared
that?
us.
But that didn't prep you on the singing front. Was that the deal?
Well,
Well, I feel
Remember
like
in
a lot
7th grade when you guys were doing like the level 1 NISMO like in level 2, and it was like really impressive to get to like level 3 or 4 in 8th grade. And then for even if you're a freshman, the lowest you ever go is 5 when you're in
Yeah.
chorus. So yeah, I
That
feel
is
like
true.
it
But
was
also not a lot of people do.
Yeah,
Nisma
not
until high
everyone.
school also.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think it was for we weren't gonna be able to do like super high level stuff considering what we were doing in the chorus class.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think it was a good like beginners. Like I think
It was
what's
a
the first
taste.
year you can start Nisma singing? Is it 6
Uh,
or 7?
NISMO singing.
It's
I thought it was
seven.
pretty young.
Well,
Fifth
when
grade.
when
It's
for
band.
band is 5th, and then singing is like 7th,
Oh,
I think.
okay.
So I did it from the first year that I could do it and up until.
Yeah, I started it just because I play piano. I started it when I was like 8, because I think for piano it's a little different. And then with wasn't it when we were fourth
Fourth
grade
grade,
for
right.
band with Mrs. President, and then
Go.
didn't do singing NISMO until I got into high school. I actually didn't even do chorus until I got into high school, but yeah.
One thing that I was really just not great with is sight reading for singing, like sight singing.
Well, that's just
No foundation at all with that, and like I don't know, you have to do that for NISMA, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, I was really bad at it.
it's a big jump from level 1 NISMO to like
Yeah.
level 6, and Mr.
Do you guys have a? I think I know the answer to this, but do you have some sort of community service component, right? Your senior year or junior year? Is there like,
NHS?
is there?
Club type things.
Yeah, or something.
Like in her,
Well, like
An
in
inter-
college and stuff,
What?
usually
Yeah.
people do volunteering for their applications and
Ah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any type of, volunteering or community service kind of thing, or, civic engagement component, feel free to come back and engage us. All right? Because I think there's ample opportunities to consider for alumni coming back and working with the current student population. Any other questions, Jocelyn? You're
Thank
good?
you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Get some sleep.
Good luck with the
Yeah.
midterm. Good luck with the
On
midterm.
that side.
And good luck with all your next journey. and
Yeah,
stuff.
thank
you.
you.
Thank
you very much.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello.
You might want to introduce yourself. Some new faces are on the board.
So my name is Heather Milano, and I am the ninth grade counselor over at the high school. So thank you to Dr. Jackson, to the entire board for inviting us, because usually we are over at our school. So this is a new setting to be doing this presentation. Oh no.
Sometimes this happens. It's a smart board. Yeah.
Thank you. So, as you all know, we have, the three communities that feed into our school. We have Garrison, West Point, and Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery community. And I do think that our school offers a very rich environment. Students are able to participate in a variety of activities. They are able to have lots of discussions, whether it's inside the classroom or outside the classroom. It's on their interactions on the field, on stage, at any kind of school-wide events. I think you're able to see that they're not divided by their separate communities. They really come together as one unified body, and they make friends with one another, and they kind of blend nicely together. With the Y. O'Neill, I think the students who came to speak tonight are really a very good example of Y. O'Neill. They are students who take advantage of the different academic opportunities that we have. They are, just like many of our students, student athletes. They are students who are pursuing their artistic, talents. They are people who want to continue playing their instruments. They want to voice their opinions and advocate for themselves. And I believe that whether it's through their athletics or through their extracurricular involvement, that they have an opportunity to do that. We're going to talk throughout this program about the different programs that we have available for them. In our academics, we have a variety of accelerated courses that students can take. We have honors programs in our English and math departments. We have advanced placement. Students can start taking advanced AP courses in as early as their sophomore year. We have an articulation with Syracuse University, Project Advance, as well as Orange County Community College, where students are able to receive college credit for their foreign language courses. We work with OU GOCES for our distance learning Chinese course, as well as Oneida Herkimer, where we are, this is our second year of running American Sign Language through a distance learning program. There are at least 30 academic electives that students are able to take, whether it's with technology, arts, music, or just within the different disciplines of history and English. So the students really have a lot of opportunity to take classes that will either satisfy their interests or help them pursue their college and career aspirations. Ms. Brand is going to speak to you about the different courses that we have to offer.
I'll use the mic because I know the camera needs the mic. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about some of the unique offerings that we've had come up in the last few years, and some coming this upcoming school year. We're always looking to keep the course offerings fresh, preparing students for the 21st century skills that we know they'll need, whether they're going to college, joining the workforce, or pursuing something individual. But we want them to leave our building with a range of skills that will prepare them for the world. And so one offering that's in its second year is our English 12 Rise program. You might know about this program already. It's really an outstanding internship program. So what it is that students, their first semester of their senior year, take English as a traditional English course. They do a lot of practical writing skills, but they do argumentative writing. It's kind of like a course that is similar to a college 101 type writing course. And they really focus in on major themes that deal with character and deal with understanding the world and their place in it. And then second semester, they transition and take some of these skills that they've developed first semester, and they bring them into the workforce. So students are tasked with choosing an internship they'd like to pursue. So we've had everything from students choosing to work. We had some students who worked with coaches on West Point last year. We had students who worked with, I'm forgetting his name, Skoufis, Senator Skoufis, and she worked with him and was actually working with him still to this day. And so we have students who are doing a wide range of things based on their interests. And so they begin by figuring out, okay, what is it that I want to do? And sometimes students realize, I always thought I wanted to be a nurse, and I realize now that seeing people sick and cleaning them up and doing all the, the grunt work of being a nurse is, a lot harder than I expected it to be. So maybe I don't want to spend the next 4 years studying to become a nurse. Or maybe it's like, this is what I'm meant to do. And so we begin by having them reach out to people through emails, through calls, through really establishing their professional selves. And that's a huge leap for a lot of our students. The idea of like presenting themselves at an interview. How do you speak to someone? How do you shake their hand? How do you get dressed? All of the soft skills that are so often not really captured in a traditional high school curriculum, these students are getting to have that experience. So that second semester, they spend most of their class time pursuing these internships, researching the field, and eventually doing a presentation at the end of the semester to kind of share their experiences. They are assigned a mentor in the school as well as an internship advisor on the job. So like in the school, they kind of make sure that the students are staying on track, give them advice, if they're stuck and they don't know which way to go, and then working with the person on site to learn the aspects of the trade that they're really most interested in. And sometimes they're getting coffee and making copies, but we all start somewhere. And so, and that's really, I think, key for students too. You're watching what other people are doing and you're learning from that observation piece. The next course, it's a new one that's coming up next year, so I can't speak quite as deeply about it, is the impact of mass media on pop culture. So that's a new course that our social studies department decided to bring in. They're taking the place of History versus Hollywood, which is a course that's interesting, but they felt like they wanted to kind of freshen things up. And because mass media and pop culture is really something that students take a lot of interest in, we're looking to gauge interest and see whether or not the students are going to elect to take it. But that's kind of indicative of something that we try to promote in the school. We want teachers to teach things they're passionate about, because if they're passionate about it, the students usually pick up on that passion as well. So we try to keep courses fresh so that the students stay engaged and so that the teachers stay engaged. We want them to feel free to take academic risks as well, because I think they're the ones modeling for our students. American Sign Language, Mrs. Milano already mentioned that. We are offering the third year next year. We have about 60 students who are taking American Sign Language, and it's really quite popular with a lot of the kids, and it's really a great opportunity for students who want to try something different, and not necessarily focusing on the grammar and the ways things are spelled differently in Spanish and in Chinese, and it's just a very physical way, obviously, of communicating, and it's almost a different way of thinking they have to learn, and so that gives them that kind of alternate perspective that someone who does use American Sign Language as their primary form of communication thinks differently than everybody else. And so even forcing them to adopt that or recognize that alternate perspective, I think is an important educational piece for students. Finally, we began this year for the first year an AP capstone school. We're I think the only one in Orange County that is a capstone school, and it means students can earn the AP capstone diploma. And it's not an easy feat. In order to do that, this year we have our first year of students taking AP Seminar, which is an absolutely incredible course. Students really are learning foundations of doing in-depth research, in-depth questioning. We just had students complete a project where they had to write a 1,200-word essay really exploring what's going on in Hong Kong today. Students had to generate their own central questions around Hong Kong, then choose a perspective and answer that question from that particular vantage point. And if you think about that kind of deep thinking, sometimes I wonder if the people in charge do that deep of thinking about things. And so it's really great to see our students engaging in processes like that. Then they take that a step further and they're evaluated. It's like any other AP course. They have multiple points of writing that they're evaluated on. It's different than a traditional AP course because it doesn't end in an AP exam. They have to get a 3 in AP Seminar, and they continue the second year of that course in AP Research next year, where they're going to do a major research project throughout the year, a little bit more independent. And once they pass those 2 courses with 3, if they get, I'm supposed to speak about this in the next slide, but I'll speak about it now. They have to get a 3 on 4 other AP exams. If they do so, They get an AP capstone diploma. One of the questions now on the Common App for our college is, are you a capstone diploma recipient? It is something that is distinctive. It is something that colleges recognize as something like science research. They really see it as something that is different from what other kids and what every kid does in school, because they know it compels deep thinking, deep writing, and some of the things that you were talking about earlier about college 101, English course. You often fail. Well, if you're doing this kind of thinking early on, you're going to be more successful. So we're proud of the fact that we not only have this course offering, but we have kids who are interested in it. And so we're hoping we have 2 wonderful teachers in the baseline of the program. We're hoping to keep it growing as the years move forward.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
It sounds great that you're evolving your curriculum and thinking about the 21st century and how people have to live now these days. Talk more about that. Talk about the kind of overarching objectives that you're hoping that these classes, these new courses, are going to lead toward. I mean, whether you're doing stuff that's more collaborative projects where groups of kids are doing stuff together, interdisciplinary stuff. Is there much of that going on at O'Neill?
Absolutely. And I would say, at its heart, one of the things I think I loved most about AP Seminar and AP Research was that at their core, they are interdisciplinary. So you might have a student who eventually does an in-depth research project that involves both, like maybe bioethics or some, so I think in today's, you asked about 21st century skills, I think one of the things that happens, especially in academia in the 21st century, is that there's no longer these subjects that exist in isolation. Like you have behavioral economics. This is like, things like that didn't exist when we went to college. These degrees that kids can pursue and really cross breed 2 different disciplines. And because they are so overlapping and because there are intricacies that we can find, and because I don't think that any field of knowledge really exists in isolation. Sometimes we make them exist in isolation, and I think one of the disservices we sometimes do in high schools is we don't show the students you're not just a scientist. I recently watched a movie, Real Genius, with my daughter. I don't know if any of you saw that 80s movie with Val Kilmer when he was very young. But one of the parts of that movie is that you have this scientist, this genius, that realizes that the inventions that he's creating are killing people. So the idea of like all science, no philosophy makes for dangerous enterprises. And so the idea that we're forcing kids to we want them to recognize these things. And so we do that in formal classes like this, but we also have teachers who informally do it as well, regularly meeting with one another. I would like to say that the intentionality is not quite as high as I would like it to be yet. That cross-curricular work. It's difficult sometimes because, we could do it like junior year, for example, when they're doing American literature and U.S. history. But a lot of times it doesn't weave that easily. Kids who are taking chemistry and algebra 2, we'll see some overlap. Kids who are taking physics and calculus, we'll see some overlap, and they will discuss those things. But sometimes it doesn't work as easily, and because we don't have a streamline of kids all taking the same courses, it's sometimes difficult to coordinate those things. So that's why classes like this and opportunities like this allow students to do that.
What about project-based learning? Is there much of that going on?
Yeah, there is. I mean, again, I think it's more individual teachers in particular types of classes. I mean, our electives are pretty much all project-based learning. I would say there are very few electives that just do, the traditional classroom setting. They're all, electronic music, 3D design, web design. Like we have a class that I'm going to talk about on this next thing, the Discoveries in Computer Science and Coding, is an incredible class where students are, we had kids who created their own virtual cards, like the e-cards you can get. They created their own. They created their own video games. They created their own arcade games, like out of cardboard boxes. I mean, they're really doing things that are inventive, and it's really about projects. It's about building. It's about solving problems. And so the whole idea behind project-based learning is pursuing objectives where you're working through problems, recognizing the problems, and then trying to find alternative solutions. And so we definitely have classes where the entire curriculum is that way. And I would say in our other classes, our core classes, they tend to be for individual assignments. They'll pursue those more project-based learning approaches in those settings. But again, I think those are part of the 21st century skills that you asked about earlier. Just a few other comments about some of these other STEAM courses that we're offering. We try to offer them on both levels because we do recognize that we have some students whose skill level is not really where everybody else's are. So one of the things we offered this year is something called High School Math Concepts, which really was a class to build foundational math for freshmen coming in that don't have the Algebra 1 skills we feel that they need to be successful. And so we try to recognize kids who are, based on our placement exam, teacher feedback, parental feedback, are you ready to dive into Algebra 1 right away? Because we want to make sure that that foundation is there so that if a kid doesn't feel like they have any idea how to add negative numbers, that they're not going into an Algebra 1 course where they have to now start adding in variables and all the things that a lot of kids find quite intimidating. Algebra 2A is an Intro to Pre-Calculus are also two courses that help those students who are not quite ready to take that leap into the next level, and it just allows them to pursue a Regents exam, but at a slightly slower pace. So they, for example, the Algebra 2 exam, they would take it over a year and a half. So they take Algebra 2A, and then in the second year in Intro to Pre-Calculus, up through the first semester, they take the Algebra 2 Regents exam, which a lot of them just did, and then they move into pre-calculus and start it so that as a senior, a lot of them would be juniors, as a senior they'd be able to take pre-calculus and stay on that college track. Whereas previously, a lot of those students were kind of taking a lower level math as a senior, and then they were not meeting the basic proficiency entering college and not passing those classes and having to take those remediated courses that cost money but don't really get them anywhere. So we wanted to help prevent that as much as possible for our students. A few other courses that we offer are AP Computer Science, the Web Design and Computer Graphics I mentioned before, and also AP Calculus. We offer both AB and BC now. BC is in its first year this year. AB is basically college semester spread over a year, and BC is basically a college pace. So especially we have a lot of students who are like Isaac, going to MIT, interested in engineering. So we want to make sure that we're offering courses that will challenge those students as well and prepare them on the same level as the most elite students in the country. And our students are getting there, as you will see later from Ms. Milano's presentations about where they're going to school. I already talked about AP Capstone. Any questions, other questions about the diploma program or anything that students have to do with that?
I think it's great that you're doing. I mean, one of the knocks against AP is that it's too much teaching to the test, and this is an attempt for AP to move it in a different direction.
Absolutely, and I think they're taking that from the lead from IB, where kids were kind of getting a different kind of preparation, and AP, this capstone diploma, I think, was a nod to that and a recognition that they did need to start broadening the opportunities for students.
And you have familiarity with the IB program,
I
right?
do, yeah. I taught in the school. I was an IB Theory of Knowledge teacher, so yeah,
Right.
I do know the program. And it's also a wonderful program, but it's very expensive, and it's not quite. I think for our population, since we have such a transient population, AP really allows students who are moving every year in and out to kind of enter an AP class and know that they're going to have a similar curriculum.
Right.
And so it really, I think, is most advantageous for our students. And we still have our SUPA courses and our OC courses to give them that college level experience. But I think AP is nice in the stability it offers our kids.
Right.
All right, thanks. I'm good.
I have a question. So the high school math concepts course that you offer, does that disallow kids from getting a Regents diploma, or?
Not at all. In fact, it's kind of guaranteed. We're hoping that it guarantees that they do.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is that we have students there who are struggling with some of those basic skills in math. And so we're building that foundation and starting them on some of the algebra and giving them a chance to really kind of gain those core concepts. And then by sophomore year, they'll take Algebra 1, hopefully pass that Regents exam, and hopefully stay on the Regents track for geometry and Algebra 2 as well. They might not get to, they're not going to get to calculus, but I don't know that those students are going to get to calculus anyway, at least not on the high school level. So we're just trying to make sure that they have the foundation so that they can go to a community college if that's where they're going. They're going to a regular college and making sure that they have the basic math skills they need to succeed.
Great.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to hand it back over to Ms. Milano. Oh, one more thing. Oh, no, sorry. One other thing we offer is a seal of biliteracy. This was started by Dr. Tehedor last year. It's the state now recognizes students who show proficiency in 2 languages can take different, they have to basically meet different criteria while they are in school. There's a whole rubric of things they have to pass. But we did have a few students who achieved it last year, and this year we have 2 more students who are pursuing it. It is not an easy test, but it does reward our students who are bilingual, whether through taking Spanish for 5 years or 10 years, as might be the case for some Garrison students, and speaking English as well, or maybe another language. they get tested in school, they do writing, they do public speaking, they're tested in a lot of ways. And so we now offer that seal also as part of our diploma option. I have capital project too. Sorry, I'm taking longer than I expected. So I also want to speak definitely about our beautiful, wonderful capital project. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to come to O'Neill since it started. We hope that this spring you'll be able to come by once the weather's a little bit nicer. Our turf field in the back, which is a multi-purpose field, our bleachers, our concession stands, everything about it is beautiful. It's really, I mean, it's not even done yet, and still, like, even just, it looks like a true athletic facility now, and it's really second to none. We've done tremendous work in the back. We have a new fitness facility. We have new weight rooms that don't smell like weight rooms anymore, or in locker rooms as well. So it's pretty incredible, like all of the facilities we have. They're still kind of getting to that stage. We're just beginning to use them because they were done September 1st, just a little bit later September 1st than what most people celebrated. We are really very close to, we're in the locker rooms now. The fitness facility, which is a aerobic fitness facility, is up and running. And so the PE classes are really planning some exciting units with that. We also have a senior lounge that is going to be open shortly. That was a treat to our seniors, especially because they had to give up parking for about 3 months at the beginning of the year. This spring, we are breaking ground in the building, and so we are building a whole new set of science classrooms that are going to be really updated by 50 years. And really that's going to open up so many possibilities for our science teachers to do things that really are up to date and really challenge our students in new and exciting ways. We're also going to have ADA compliant bathrooms. We're going to have a new floor in our auditorium. There's just so many exciting things that are going on, and we're hoping by September of this coming school year we're going to have brand new classrooms, and so we invite you always to come and check out our facilities. They're really an incredible thing and something that the Garrison students have taken advantage of and are going to enjoy, I'm sure, as well. We also have some renovated parking lots, new outdoor lighting. There's just so many great things that you'll see out there, but I think I covered all the major things, but thank you very much for your time. And,
So as you heard from the students who were here earlier, many of our students are involved in our musical department. Mr. Tom Cunane is the head of our music department. He's also the band director. Mr. Reynolds is our chorus teacher. We have jazz band as a extracurricular club. We have men's choir, women's choir, select choir, general chorus. Students are constantly performing, rehearsing. They go for All County, NYSSMA. They perform at, here's a bunch of, they get best overall ratings, Festival of Music. They have gone to Chicago. They've performed at Carnegie Hall. So they're constantly out there, constantly performing. Earlier I would say in December, when we had the Garrison students come to visit our school, they do, whenever asked, they do live performances. So they're a very good, I guess, they introduce to the students what they could be involved in at our school, and they're very passionate. I think whenever our chorus department, whenever the chorus sings, like everyone's moving and dancing, and it's very impressive. I think like the audience gets involved, the students aren't like embarrassed or shy, they're very involved in it. So I think when the younger students come and see like this is what they could be a part of, it's very encouraging, like that they can be a part of this kind of musical community at the school. With our JROTC program, Major Damshin and Sergeant Simpkins are our two instructors. We have about, I would say, 120 students, 120 cadets who are within the program. I would say it's equally split, male and female. There's a lot of leadership opportunities. Students are able to be promoted within the program. They're able to be responsible for like the public relations, for the award ceremonies, and they could do that as early as freshman year, rise in like leadership opportunities. So again, even though they're not necessarily pushing students into the military. We do have quite a few students who do apply and are accepted into the military academies, or they're receiving ROTC scholarships. So it is a very strong program at our school. The students come in on Thursdays, they wear their uniforms, they're proud of coming in, and it's their own little community within the school. This past year, they made 5th in the nation for the National Academic Meet. A few years ago, they made 2nd in the nation, so they're constantly entering various competitions. They became regional champions for orienteering, so that's when they're kind of placed in the middle of the woods, and they're given a map and a compass, and they have to find their way around. Major Damchen was mentioning that they had recently in the, I believe in the orienteering, or the academic league was an all-female team, and they did incredible. So they're really looking to promote females to males. It's a very good program for the students, and they are proud to be involved. As far as athletic program, we have 22 varsity teams, 10 JV teams. Last year, we had 17 scholar athlete teams. 75% of those teams qualified, so we were a school of excellence. So Ms. Debbie Crow, who's our athletic director, is very proud of leading that accomplishment. We have 4 Section 9 champs, 6 modified teams, so there's a lot of emphasis that our students are involved. We have many students who play multi-season sports. Listening to the students say before that they would like to figure out how to manage their time with all the clubs that they're involved in. I do hear from them. I'm one of the S2S club advisors, and it is hard sometimes. You know, they really are actively involved in a lot of clubs. They have their sports, so there's a lot that they have to juggle, but I do think that, and we'll get to it a little bit later, about I believe 67% of the Garrison students are involved in some JV or varsity sport, and over 70% of them are involved in an extracurricular club as well. Now, with regards to our guidance department, we have 3 counselors in the department. I'm the 9th grade counselor, and once we hit this time of the school year, I start working with the incoming 9th graders. So I work with the 8th grade families and the students, and helping them transition into high school. Mrs. Mackey and Mr. Brightfeller, they work with students grades 10 through 12. From 9th grade all the way up through senior year, we start the college preparation process. This is the 2nd year that we are running a college fair in the fall. Already, just within the year, we've increased our numbers of college representatives who attended the fair. We also do instant decision days where colleges come. We prepare the students' transcripts, their applications, and on the spot they're getting their decisions for their applications. That's typically with the community colleges, but that's very helpful for some of our students who may not have the means to get to that college right now. Their college application fees are waived, and it just helps with that process where they're able to get that information on the spot. We also have college reps come to us on a regular basis to meet with the students. Because we are a small school, those meetings tend to be a little bit more private, and you know, it's not necessarily a large group, so the students do have the opportunity almost for like a one-on-one meeting with their collegiality interest inventories, career interest inventories. We work with them to create a game plan where they're trying to get a sense of where they are in 9th grade and what they see themselves doing in post-secondary. And then each year we have them fill out that game plan so they could see if their ideas have kind of blossomed into something new. And then eventually as a senior, this is where we track their applications and their letters of recommendation and send out their documents for their college applications. We also, in December, host an alumni panel. So for graduates who just recently graduated, they come back, they talk with our juniors and seniors about their first year experiences, whether it's in college or the workplace or the military. And we feel like that's a very good opportunity for students to kind of understand what's beyond high school. And just for some information on the Garrison student body, we currently have 49 total Garrison students, 11 ninth graders, 11 10th graders, 6 11th graders, and we have 18 12th graders, but 21 because there's 3 students who graduated from Garrison, but since then have moved into a different community, but we're including them in the data because they're from here. 67% of Garrison students are in honors and or AP or super or OC classes. 45% of the ninth graders are in an honors class. 64% of the 10th graders are in an honors and or AP class. 67% of 11th graders are in honors and or AP, and 76% of our 12th graders are in honors AP or OC. 38% of the Garrison 12th graders are in NHS, and 63% were in a JV and varsity sport. Our O'Neill mean SAT score for last year was an 1196. For the Garrison students, it was a 1242. So when I was going through the data, last year's graduates and our current 12th graders did very, very well on their SATs. And we compiled a list of where the students attended, the graduating classes from 2016 up until 2019. So you can see like there's a variety of locations that students are going to, whether it's a SUNY school, you have, or you have Duke, or you have BU, or you have University of Rochester, or some local, Mount St. Mary College. So there really are, varying levels of interest or locations as to where your students who have graduated from Garrison, where they're ending up once they leave O'Neill. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thanks.
That's a lot of information. Any questions? We good? Are we all right? Yeah. Is there any input anything that you have for us? Any other questions you have for us?
I think the students captured a lot of it, but we see, go to that, Mike. I think the main things we see, your students are wonderful about getting involved. Their work ethic as students is great. For the most part, they really are where they need to be when they enter high school. Yes, a lot of them go through the culture shock that Isaac described, whether it's, for higher expectations or difficulty of material. We do see kind of across the board, it's not exclusive to Garrison, we do see kids who struggle with kind of the reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. We do see like some of those foundational things or areas they struggle with, and so transitioning to that high school piece is hard. I don't think it's necessarily deficiency, it's just something that can always be improved upon. And I think, there's this, I think the middle school curriculum really has to deal with a lot of abilities and also has to deal with there's so many things are molding in middle school. And it's about molding people as well as the academic mind, and I think that balance sometimes one trumps the other, and so we really have to make sure that, or they have to make sure that they're catering to those things. And so I think sometimes the kids leave that world where they're being cared for in every way, and they enter this world that's very academic. They're surrounded by other kids who are very driven. It's a very competitive scenario sometimes, I think, for especially the highest level students, and I will say that our Garrison students, as you can see by the numbers, tend to be among some of the more competitive classes, and so I think they enter these honors level classes with kids who are just as bright as them, and they're going from being big fish in a very small pond to being in a medium pond where there are other big fish though, and so it's so it takes some time to adjust.
Do you have any suggestions about things we could do with our middle school curriculum that would make our kids synchronize more smoothly with what they get at O'Neill?
I think always, and I think this is true of middle schools all over the country, I think they could do more reading and writing that's more rigorous. I do think it's hard though. It's not, I was, at a school today that's pretty much a prep school level school, and they were talking about how they need to break things down almost to the sentence level to get kids at the level they need to be at. So I think that writing component. Kids don't read as much as they used to. I don't know if that's necessarily true of Garrison students. I couldn't say for sure that they're not as active readers. But the fact of the matter is that because kids don't read as much as they used to, writing is more difficult. And reading extensively is more difficult. So I think the more reading and writing we can kind of get them doing, because literacy now is a part of every subject area. Like, you know, I was talking to a teacher today about literacy in math and how kids in the highest levels of math are often struggling with comprehending what the questions are even asking. And like, so how do you get to the highest level of math when you don't know exactly what you're answering? So the more we can give kids not only reading but challenging reading, you know, and writing tasks, I think the better they're going to be served in the future. But that's a tall order, and something I think we can do incrementally and build in the grades. I feel like sometimes in elementary school I feel like they're pushed harder, and then we pull back a little bit because of and this again I see everywhere because of the emotional elements of hitting puberty and all of those transitions, social transitions that they're making as well. So.
Thank you.
And I would say focus on deadlines, like just the time management aspect, because I really do think that, especially with working with the ninth graders, that idea that something, when it's due, it's due. You know, it's true that idea that it's flexible, like that the teacher will be lenient, that you can hand it in late. You
can charm.
Yeah, but it really, I think that's a tremendous reality, like shock when they do come to the high school and all of a sudden 10 points are being deducted, 20 points are being deducted, and then the work that they're putting in, they're not getting their full credit, or that they just got a 0, like it just wasn't tolerated. And so just that like essential work habit, you know, that when it's due, it's due.
Deadlines still shock me.
but they really do struggle with that. And I would just say, like, the organization, you know, the Chromebooks are a blessing, but they also, with Google Classroom, the students aren't necessarily like record keeping as much anymore. And so they're not putting actually when their deadlines are, and they don't understand how important that time management is. So that would be my recommendation as the ninth grade counselor.
When is the parent showcase for Garrison School? You have a next Tuesday,
at
which is
7.
Well, it's like the 8th grade parent. It's
the 8th grade parent visit, right?
Yeah.
I want to, encourage all the board members and the public to. It'd be okay if the
Yes,
board members.
you're absolutely welcome.
Yeah, but it might be important to see the new facilities and see what's going on, so that you can better have a concept of what our students are experiencing. I mean, I'm sure that for a number of years things remain the same, and with this capital project, it's going to feel a little different, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. And it might be nice for you to see it before and after. So you'll see the
Yeah.
before inside the building.
If not this year, then certainly next year we'd take a tour.
Yeah. And you're always welcome, and we'd be happy to take you around anytime you'd like to do this.
We'll also be undergoing in maybe initially in the late spring, and then going into the fall, start a strategic planning process. So I think the more we can communicate about that, how our high schools are responding to us in relationship to our strategic planning, I think that would be useful, I would imagine, right? Any other thoughts? Congratulations. I mean, U.S. News World Report, it's whatever, but you guys did really great. I understand. Congratulations to that. And all your successes and the recognitions that the school's been it's really on the streak, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Thank you. As Chief Justice Roberts, you're granted 10 minutes. I will be skimpy on the president's announcements because it's been a long day already, but there's a couple things to point out, I am sure. One is we had a productive visit by District-wise search firm, and anyone want to speak to that? do you want to talk a little bit about
The forum?
the forum that we had on Saturday? District-wise, he was here all day Thursday.
Right.
And then the board hosted a search forum on Friday, or on Saturday. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, so on Thursday, I believe we got a good handful of students coming out district-wise, right? And
Yes.
good amount of teachers and faculty, and then probably 15-ish to 20 community members. And then feeling like we wanted to make a weekend option available for the very, very busy community members. We held one on Saturday morning. The three of us, Courtney, James, and I, were there at the library at the Deadly Fish, and 4 or 5 people showed up, and all with, most of them with maybe not even children in the district. But it was really great to hear. I mean, I would loved hearing. I would love to hear more, and I think that there's still opportunities for people to contribute through the confidential email. So there's still plenty of time, at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks.
16th, I believe.
Yeah, the 16th of February. So we have plenty of time to still hear a lot of feedback from the shy community members who have yet to come out.
Right, and for the press, I have the email contact, if you want to include that. It's govsupt, S-U-P-T, search at districtwisesearch.com. I have it up here. By February 16th, and at that point, district-wise will present to the board a report on their impressions and the data that they've collected, and we will move forward from there. So we're still very much in the early stages of this process. So I just want to give the public a heads up on that. The district clerk search. Do you want to talk briefly
sure.
about that?
Yes, we are doing the search for the executive secretary, the superintendent, district clerk. Applications were all due this past week. I paper screened them just because there were quite a few, about 70. And in some cases, yes, I want to be clear though, I see that smile. In some cases, people applied and having an education background wouldn't necessarily qualify you for that position. So it was really honing that down to about 18. Doing some initial reference checks just to be sure that if we are thinking about someone, if we do know, can we at least do some initial checking? And so we are, we have a nice mix of people who have experience, and we have some people who have had some experiences or have some other backgrounds that might be able to lead into that. So we're hoping that we can do the first round of interviews this coming week. We're looking at schedule. I would hope it'd be Sue Hutter, myself, and we talked a little bit about a couple board members doing that, trying to fit quite a few first screening interviews in and see if we can't move that forward. Beth, as you know, is going the end of February, so the thought is the sooner we can move this forward, it would be advantageous to use her and have some overlap with it all possible so she can share her knowledge on to the next person. So that's really, so right now that's a priority.
And Deborah, you're going to be out of districts on certain dates. You want to let the public know?
I will be out of district starting January 31st, and I'll return to this region I'll be back here on the 10th of February. So during that time, I will not be here. We've made arrangements should there be snow or weather. Both Alex and Sue have all that contact information, so does BOCES. I just shared that with, actually I've already shared that with Hal Bain, and just tonight shared it with O'Neill. So certainly I think I've covered everything, and there'll be good hands, but I will be gone. So one of the pieces that makes this key is that we can at least get these first round of interviews done prior to that, and see where we're at.
Great. Any other things you want to announce?
Sure. Then we're right into me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
I will try to make it brief as well. I had an exciting meeting with was able to learn a lot from the environmental discussion group that met Friday. I really have to thank everyone who gave their time, including one of our students. I thank Alex, who was able to set up that video component. That's something we talked about. We talked about Zoom. We did it on YouTube. For those who couldn't attend, my guess is there's lots we can do to learn more about how to do that better, and we will. But I think that was a great first step in that. And I also want to thank two of the teachers, Mr. Young and Mrs. Waters, who took some time before this meeting just to give me some history of the school forest and all those pieces, so it made sense. So it was a great meeting, lots accomplished, lots more to do, and I will leave that for another time. The play area enhancement design team will be meeting. This was postponed from December, so it's something again that we can do as some early design work. So I know that's being scheduled, and we're again looking to see that happening in this coming week. Talked about the secretary. I just wanted to share, Jocelyn mentioned that we're having the planning committee meeting on Monday, February 17th at 7 p.m. I have been in touch with Jonathan Costa, and he is giving me information and will give me some background as well that I'll share. I'll skip that over. Tetra Tech, the architectural firm, is in discussion with us on that contract, so an executive session tonight on that agenda is that discussion of that contract. So I will update you there. And the RFP went out for the construction management firm, and responses are due back on February 7th. Again, Sue said to me, you'll be back just in time for us to have that whole list to review. So it seems like everyone's trying to put things before I go and when I'm back, and I appreciate the board truly for understanding that this was a prior commitment.
No, we support you, and and we're just happy you're part of the community. The public should be aware that this was all worked out ahead of time. So thank you for that. Principal's remarks, Alice.
Good evening, everyone. I will too. Try to be brief. First, I did just want to extend our thanks on behalf of all of us here. Just O'Neill in their hospitality and just their tours for our students, and just the district as a whole. It's been wonderful in my brief experience there. And it truly is, if you can tour the facilities, it's absolutely amazing what they're doing there, and I think it'll be nice to inform us as we step into our own process. So thank you to them. I'd like to congratulate, and this is dating back a few weeks ago, we had a performance of Chateau La Roche, courtesy of Miss Liz, as well as the set design was absolutely incredible. Thanks to Mr. Young, made a set that would be able to be reused as well for future performances. So this was actually the day performance that was the entire school, so all the students were able to enjoy that all together. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to our athletic team. Our boys basketball team is actually on a 4-0 streak, so they are doing well and performing well, so congratulations to them. And just from the classroom as well, so we've had, I've been in a number of classrooms, one of which, so I was in Mr. Connor's classroom as he was discussing musical rhythms and just the language of music and how it relates to just, in so many ways, just linguistics and literacy. So very interesting in terms of the interdisciplinary approaches, very evident in our classroom instruction. And interestingly enough, as I was sitting, this was a first grade classroom, and I thought back to my own first grade experience with Mr. Nafrio and guided math centers. They are learning concepts such as a true number sentence, which is conceptually just their understanding that a sentence such as 7 plus 2 would equal 8 plus 1, but having that written out on either side of the equal sign. So for us, understood, but at a first grade level, to put that all together conceptually is quite complex. So we're seeing that vertical alignment that I think Ms. Brand was speaking to as well. And thank you to our parents as always. Taco Bowl was always a hit, so we do appreciate them very kindly. They are always offering it to our entire staff and all of us, and the smells waft through the hallways, and we truly do appreciate that. It's always a highlight for all of us, and we make it a priority to get down there as quickly as possible, so thank you. And lastly, just some upcoming events. So just a reminder too that since the beginning of the year and in the summer, I still am holding on Monday afternoons and time for parents and or community members to schedule time to meet. If you've taken me up on the opportunity, just schedule through Google Classroom, or Google Calendar rather, so that is available, and I appreciate that time. It's informative for myself. Middle school midterms, I know our high school students have them, so ours actually begin tomorrow as well for grades 7 and 8 only, as one of my parents made sure to clarify. They had a concerned 6th grader. It is only 7th and 8th grade. And the end of the middle school second quarter will be next Friday the 31st. And finally, as we talk about our registration of 9th graders and our departing 8th graders, we are now moving into the entrance of our new kindergarten students, believe it or not. It is that time of year. So we will have registration Tuesday and Wednesday the 4th and 5th respectively. So. Cougar Corner as always. We did not go international this week, so that is fine. But nonetheless, a good resource for all of us, hopefully, and just a reminder of who we are here for as collectively as a group.
Any questions for Alex or Deborah? Dr. Jackson? I'll get my mind around that perfectly well. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One question for you, Alex. Can you reiterate these office hours you're keeping, or you have these
Yes, so
appointments
sorry.
sort of set aside?
I went too quickly.
Yeah. Right.
Every Monday, 3:30 to 5, I'm in my office, and appointments can be made. I leave the link in the Cougar Corner. But if people have difficulty, you can contact the main office, and they'll schedule the appointment. And more recently, within the new year, some of our parents have been taking me up on that, and that's been constructive. It is helpful for myself as well, so I can make that time outside of the school day, so the conversation doesn't have to be rushed in any way, and that we can take time to really, so I can hear if there's any concerns, questions, or if I can clarify anything. So that's going forward to infinity.
All right, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda, financial reports. That would be you, Sue.
Would be.
Yes.
First, I'll go over, we have the November Treasurer's Report. First part is the multi-fund account, which started out at $2,616,909.27. We had overall revenues mostly from real property taxes and state and federal aid of $218,708.45, and overall expenses by check and/or wire of just about $800,000. So we ended the month at $2,016,532.88. And then on the investments, not much activity there. We started out with $9,209,702.27. Had interest income of $5,409.08, and ended the month at $9,214,616.35.
Okay.
So that's something you have to approve.
Yeah, I'm aware. Need a motion here. Seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District accepts the Treasurer's Report for November 2019 as presented. Is that correct? Yes. It's November? All right.
We have the budget revenue
Do
and...
we need to vote on that?
Sorry.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Budget, what do we got next? Budget status revenue warrant reports.
Mhm.
Yeah, great.
Those are pretty much business as usual. If you have any questions, otherwise, the warrant report is from November. The next board meeting will have the warrant reports and the December treasurer's reports. Just couldn't get them done in time, basically, today, for today's meeting.
Got it. Okay, and a budget transfer,
So I'll
number
move on to
4.
the budget transfer. Budget transfer for $49,000. This is really just looking at the accounts. There's nothing glaring in any of these. It's just looking at the accounts and anticipating what we're going to be spending by the end of the year. So just want to do some budget transfers, especially for the computer hardware. It's actually right behind you.
Okay.
There. We will be getting money back from the Smart Bonds Act, but not quite the full amount of that. It's the end of the cycle of where we're putting up these last of the boards that we're putting up. So I think we're only going to get reimbursed about $11,000 out of the 20 plus that we spent on those.
Is the Smart Bonds Act move fiscal year or calendar year?
I'm sorry, what?
The Smart Bonds Act, right? It's an annual thing?
It's not an annual thing. It
Right.
was something that was approved a few years ago.
Right.
Every school in the state got a certain amount of money.
Okay.
We were entitled to about $78,000. Some schools got millions. And we chose to use most of our money towards these smart boards and some of the wireless that we did last year. So we're down to the last just over 11,000 that we can collect. I didn't want to have a negative amount showing there on that line, so that's why I wanted to do the transfer.
All right, terrific. Motion to accept the transfer. Second?
Okay.
Be resolved, the Board of Education, Garrison Union Free School District approves the budget transfer number 4 in the amount of $49,500. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? And the ayes have it. Budget overview.
Just to let the board know, we have been working on budget since the fall, having meetings with administrators in the building, speaking to special eds, facilities, transportation, trying to map out what our thoughts are for next year to kind of get a game plan. Game plan does trickle down to finances, believe it or not, with programs. So as you know, we've set up a budget calendar. We have a state aid run that just came out last night, I believe. So kind of mushing together. Our state aid is actually going down this year, just about 29,000. Most of that is due to a decrease in our building aid. And if you recall, during the capital project talks months ago, we talked about how our bond was falling off. Well, because the amount that we're paying is falling off, also the amount of aid that we're getting back on that is falling off. It's just finishing up. The old project is finishing up. New project will be coming on, but we won't be borrowing that this year. We probably will be borrowing towards the end of next year. And I'm accounting for that in our tax cap calculation. Which I'm thinking at this point is an estimated 2.36% for Garrison. That incorporates, I'm sure some of you have heard, the state came down and said that the tax cap is at 1.81%. That's only part of a calculation. So I did an initial estimate of where our tax cap will be, and I'm thinking it's going to be at 2.36%, which seems to be in line with other school districts, their initial estimates as well. I was at a meeting on Friday with other business officials. It allows us to increase our tax levy about $219,000. And again, these are all estimates here. We're just kind of talking right now. I'll have a better presentation with numbers and my typical on-the-screen display at the next board meeting. Our goal is to stay under the tax levy cap. I'm not anticipating that we would even go for an override at any point. And my estimated budget-to-budget increase would be at 2.51%, which would mean we would have to plan on using some reserves.
So to reiterate, we're looking at a 2.3%, 2.36% increase, but the budget-to-budget rollover is 2.51.
Yeah.
In order to make that up, we have to draw on reserves or plan on drawing on reserves, whether we...
Or, you know, the initial runs from the state aid are usually low. They usually come out a little bit higher. That may change. There's a lot of things in motion that we're, still, I'm still working on. I'm still getting estimated costs for next year for a lot of different things. So it's my best estimates right now at this point. I know that there was a question about our fiscal stress. Some of you got an email talking about our fiscal stress. We don't really have fiscal stress. We were determined no designation, which is a good thing. So our fiscal stress...
The state runs series of metrics to determine whether you are in a fiscally non-stressful situation or a fiscally stressful situation, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
And we came out with no designation, which means we don't, under their calibrations, we do not suffer from a fiscally stressful
Any
situation.
school can get a score from 0 to 100. So our score for fiscal stress was 10. So any score 0 to 24.9 would be no designation, which means they're not really concerned about us right now.
High is bad in this case.
Yes.
You don't want to score.
You want the
100.
lowest score possible.
Okay.
And that, I think that was down from last year. I don't have that in front of me, but and our economic score was 15, and again, that's a score from 1 to 100.
Is it environmental?
Environmental, thank you.
In the environmental stress, we just came from a finance meeting, that's why I know
Yes.
this. The environmental stress is the factors that include, the number of students you have
It's,
in certain, whether it be class categories or language categories and new employees. It's everything else that has to deal with, the mechanism of the institution.
Yep.
That also is calibrated by the state.
It's poverty, class size, teacher turnover, tax base, budget support, and English language learners that we have in the district. And our score was a 15 out of 100. Again, no designation if you're 0 to 29.9. So we scored well in
So
that.
no matter how stressed out we all are, we're not that stressed out.
We have no fiscal
No
stress.
fiscal or environmental stress.
But that would tend to work against us if we wanted some kind of fiscal support from the state, right? If we were to apply for some kind of grant, that would be negative for us, I assume, right?
Having no fiscal stress is a good thing. The state would come down on you if you, and look at you to up your whatever it is that you're not doing, whatever area.
Yeah.
So if you aren't providing support for certain students, if you don't have some money in reserves for an emergency, they would advise you to make some of those shifts and make yourself healthy. Where it is a problem is if you are going out for a bond rating and your bond ratings are low, would be lower because you are obviously not in a good financial situation. So we are really in a good place. It's almost a non-discussion.
Yes, and I agree. The fact that we are going to be going out for a bond within the next year and a half, you want to keep these scores low. Absolutely.
Is that it, Sue?
Pretty much. One of the other things I did want to add was part of the reason why our tax cap calculation was at the 2.36 is that our growth factor actually increased this year, which was a little surprising to me. But it did increase to a 0.0069, which did give us a little extra money in our tax cap calculation. That was a little bit of an increase. I believe last year was 0.0047.
This has to deal with new construction or development in the area, and it seems that there's been maybe the state is registering that there's some movement in the district as far as increase in housing, at least maybe the size of the cost of the homes or the value of those homes that are being built. Something. 9D has a lot of big houses, I guess. I don't know. There's a couple new houses up, I see, right? Yeah.
I would prefer to get a better explanation, because I don't do that,
I know,
what
I don't
the growth
understand what it
factor
would
is.
be.
And I will definitely could report on it in the next meeting.
The Office of Real Property Tax should tell us a little bit more
Okay,
about it.
great. If
Everything you
necessary.
wanted to know.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, Sue.
You're welcome.
Consent agenda. I need a motion to accept the consent agenda items B through D.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Any questions? Let's see. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, Garrison Union Free School District approves the consent agenda items 7B through D as presented. Before we vote, are there any questions on any of the items there within, it's B, C, and D.
Comment. I'd like to thank Mr. Caliendo for stepping up and filling the shoes as the student government advisor. As long as Mr. Evans moved on, I really appreciate him taking that on as well, in addition to everything else he's doing for us. I just wanted to thank
Thanking
Mr.
Chris
Caliendo.
for taking on the role of being the student advisor, and we're also paying him a stipend of $758,
Yeah.
which is in the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Then the ayes have it. Item 8, discussion items, committee updates. Sarah, you want to tell us a little bit about the finance committee? What you can tell us? I don't know what is covered. We met.
We met right before this. I think a lot of it has already been summarized, given I won't keep this, but we reviewed the previous year, my understanding where we were and where we are now and where we are going forward. Do you have anything to add, Sue?
Well, I usually give a synopsis of the fund balance and where we are with that, and we are feeling like we're going to be with expenses and revenues at this point in time for this current year. So I do see that we, although we said in the budget season last year that we were going to use just about $800,000 of fund balance, I see it probably more at this point. Maybe it's going to be more like $400,000. So that's a good thing, using less than we would.
But remember, when we're using funds to use less than we thought we were going to use, we're still using what is sort of colloquially referred to as our savings, okay, and the reserve funds, right? One of the hallmarks of a solid fiscally responsible district is predictable increases in the taxes, predictable shape to your tax experience. One way we do that is we control how much debt service we're providing and how much debt load we're taking on, right? And I think that what Sue has been able to do and what the history of the district has been able to do is to maintain a predictable level, especially the tax cap is helping us do that, but at the same time our management of our affairs allows for a very predictable experience for the taxpayer, so that we're not having sudden increases where we have to go for an override and sudden dips where people are getting taxed less than they expected and feel like they might have more, and then having a surge back up where you see some of this shape. We are seeing a much more predictable, reliable, so people can plan their lives accordingly. It's not a shocker when they get their tax bill.
I strive to do that, and I think the board has been striving to do that for years, is to try to keep things steady. It's a good plan. Don't want to excite people with double-digit increases, which I'm totally against.
Planning committee, Jocelyn is meeting February 17th.
February 17th.
Okay, so David, myself, Dr. Jackson, and Jocelyn will convene to talk about scheduling out in the future, meaning what a basic shape to this strategic plan will look like. And people should be aware that the strategic plan goes on for a while. It can go on for a year. It could take a year to implement a plan. So it's something you do while you're doing other work. And it doesn't supplant or marginalize any other kind of work going on in the building or in the district, but it's something that a board and an institution ought to be always doing, is maintaining your plan, projecting out what your plan is, and implementing it as you go, and revising it, thinking about how you're going to revise it just as you're implementing it. So as long as you keep that culture of planning going on, a more healthier projection toward the future is able to be obtained. So we're going to be meeting, sort of discussing that. Other committees.
The policy committee met on Friday. It was Courtney, Dr. Jackson, and myself. We reviewed past work with Dr. Jackson. We also began working on Section 5000. We will also, Dr. Jackson has brought to our attention that we need to address the data privacy policies. We're waiting on some guidance on that, and then those will be incorporated into our meetings, and we'll be meeting again next week to continue our work.
What's Section 5000? Do you remember?
It's the financial section.
Ah.
But it includes a lot of really interesting policies, including our wellness policy, which I find very engaging. So it's very interesting work.
I think wellness is a big, wellness is a wonderful policy because it can be a catch-all for a lot of things that you might want to achieve. Excellent.
Do you have anything to add for me?
So that covered it. We really just did a summary of all the work that we had done over the fall and made sure we were on the right track and figure out where to go next and how far we were going to make it this year.
We do our best. It is definitely engaging.
Any other committees that met? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
We will have facilities meetings with the architect once we agree to the contract.
Yes.
Right.
So we're really waiting for that to come together. And I did ask Garrett, what is he thinking in terms of how those facility meetings should look like? How long should they be? So, but we do need to first move forward with the contract.
Okay, great. Anybody serving on any building committees that they want to? Not yet. We're also looking at ways of trying to make sure that, I know some people are in the city often during times in which committees meet, and there's a beginning discussion on being able to appear remotely, be able to attend those meetings remotely, so that if you're working in the city, you can attend the 4 o'clock meeting either through Zoom or Skype or any one of these technological ways of appearing remote. So I think that would be really helpful so that people can stay on top of their responsibilities and also be present when it's difficult because of work-related reasons. So if you can't, I think if we can find ways to make that happen, that'd be great. Especially in this day and age. Is that it? Okay, other discussion item, a school resource officer. Dr. Jackson, sorry. Do you want to frame this for us? Or anyone want to frame it for us? Like, why are we talking about this? Would be a great question.
Let me just sort of start with why this came to my attention. The Putnam County Sheriff called, was very interested to know if our school board and community were interested in going forward with this school police officer, or what I've known as a school resource officer, and again, I think it comes by different names. And if so, he was interested in pursuing a grant to see if the first 3 years could be funded somewhat. So he did not want to put forth that effort if that was not something that this district was interested in. He added that all the districts he knew in Putnam County really had someone in place, and would we be interested? Certainly, we're not a high school district. Certainly, it's great. I've had school resource officers. They are very much involved in the school, and if there's funding, that's even better. But once that 3-year commitment ends, that it's a salary commitment on the part of the school board. So it isn't free. I'm just going to say that. And so you would be making a long-range decision. I have not had that conversation outside of really just letting the board know, and it's on this agenda. But I was able to, because I'm not as familiar what are K-8 schools doing, what are some other schools doing. Today I had an opportunity to ask a couple questions as I was coming across people. So someone said, what is Botanical Hills? I think one of you asked, doing, they do not have a school resource officer. Croton Harmon, Croton School District does not have a school resource officer. So certainly, I don't want you to think it's everywhere and not here. And I can add, what I'm thinking about this, but I think it's really at this point, it's something, is this a priority for a school board, what are the issues here? What would that role be? It would need to be someone highly trained, especially in a K-8, because they can't take action without school officials. They can't be in local prime time. There's a real clear ruling on how they have to work. And that just comes from my own experience. So I would open it up to the board for questions. You may have things you want me to research. I'd be happy to do that.
I just want to understand, is the purpose of this discussion to come to a decision on this question now?
No.
or just vote?
Like all items that come before the board, we discuss, maybe we deliberate. And if we were to make an action item, it would appear on another agenda. For this particular one, I would imagine that it would appear again as a discussion item. I would recommend that we make no decisions on something this sort of weighty and based upon one discussion, but it's very important that we vote, that if we're going to have a discussion about this, A, we have to do it publicly, and B, that we, think about it carefully. So, so this was also raised by at least one parent. I've heard maybe one or two parents asking about this, and it's come up in the past. So I thought maybe we could have a open discussion, and at least preliminarily consider. What are your thoughts, Sarah?
I had two thoughts to sort of start the discussion on this. One is that, we are going to be budgeting very closely and in looking at staffing needs. And my understanding of what a school resource officer does, and please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, this is based on just research and what I've been looking into, is in addition to patrolling the building for safety, they can sometimes act as a counselor. Because obviously we're a very small school, there's only 200 students, there's not a lot of patrolling to make up the cost of, the estimates I saw were 30 to 50,000. So in terms of adding more money to a counseling role, I feel like our district already has a school psychologist, a guidance counselor. So in that area, I feel like we're already putting in a lot of resources for those parts. And then the second aspect of this, from what I read, and I know the law just changed on this in July, and I read some of what Haldane has done to update it, but because the change in the law was basically, from my understanding, is that the contract with the school resource officer would need to state that the school administrator has the authority in all disciplinary issues. And in order to really draft that contract, we really need to link it carefully to our code of conduct. So in my mind, we're sort of putting the cart before the horse by not looking first at the code of conduct and how do we handle things such as when there's instances of bullying, who does that go to before we add in a police officer that could possibly escalate a situation? Or if there is a search that needs to happen, how does that search happen of a student? How does it differ between a middle school student and an elementary student? So having those discussions, I think, would come before, in my opinion, adding a police officer to the school environment. And really looking at what our current staff who we pay for now, the guidance counselor and the psychologist, are doing in those capacities, and Mr. Levine as the principal. What are their roles before we bring in somebody who, in my understanding, doesn't report to our school. They still report to the sheriff's office. So
That's my understanding, and again.
I have some concerns there, especially because our children are not high schoolers. They're young.
Just a point on the financial end of it, not that this is determined by finances, but do we have a commitment on the benefits for this person? Is there retirement commitments? Is this pension eligible? Is this
I would say no. It's usually like
health insurance?
No.
Liability?
I want to say most schools that I know are paying a flat rate to the county. And sometimes they might throw in a FICA charge. It depends on what you negotiate in the contract with the county. But no, they don't really become our employees. It's more like a contract.
Okay.
So.
Do we
Some information about that.
Do we? Okay.
So the Department of Justice has an office, the acronym is CUPS, and they have a grant program that closes on March 11th. And with it, police departments or sheriff's departments, any law enforcement agency can hire new officers, but the grant provides 75% of the approved entry-level salaries and fringe benefits, up to $125,000 per officer for 3 years. So it's a 36-month grant period. They say that they'll give additional consideration to applicants who are interested in school-based policing. But one thing I see is that we are not in a high crime area. And, to my mind, federal funds would be better used in an area that is dealing with crime. So I don't know, I guess I'll back up a little bit. To my mind, if anybody was interested in this, I wouldn't want to use Garrison school funding. I would rather have the Putnam Sheriff's Department seek out the grant and use grant funding for it if this was something that people wanted. But I don't know how viable an application would be for this area because this is a really safe area.
And that's certainly what the sheriff, I don't know what grant it was, he did not say, but he said he would apply to the paperwork, that funding would fund it for 3 years. He did not know if we would even get the funding, but he did not want to put that time and effort in if we were not interested. And I believe we were, in his words, the only school in Putnam that wasn't working with the sheriff's office or did not have an SRO.
I have two, I'm not enthusiastic about the idea of school resource or security officer for a couple of reasons. One is that I can't think of, in the last 3 years, I can't think of any incident at this school that would have benefited from the intervention of a retired policeman or a policeman. That's number one. Number two, if somebody is sitting here day in and day out and basically has nothing to do, he or she has an incentive to find things to do, to maybe take certain incidents and make them seem more threatening than somebody else might judge them to be. I guess I mean, I'm perfectly happy to discuss this to great length, but is there anyone who likes the idea? Maybe we should put it that way, see if anybody wants to argue for it.
I don't know if anyone, yeah.
Got no argument for it. And I agree,
Well,
I think Sarah makes a really good point that we have, especially in the policy committee, as we've learned, we have work to do on the code of conduct, and that needs to move up to the top of our priority list.
My concern is, well, I have so many concerns. The concern, guns in schools make me uncomfortable. I work in an open campus, 5,000 students. None of the security officers have weapons. None of them. And there's been some dramatic events in the history of our school, but none of our security have weapons. And I work completely open. You can drive right on campus. And I like it that way. And the faculty in the administration year in, year out, and the students year in, year out say the same thing. We don't want them. And it makes me nervous. Now, I guess the argument for having a school resource officer is to prevent, my understanding is to prevent school shootings. That's one argument that comes up. I've yet to see any study that says that they prevent it or that they avert. The biggest thing that we have to avert violence in schools, whether they be weaponry or not, is talkative kids and talkative parents communicating about issues and concerns. So for me, it's about putting money where the most effective thing is. If we have students that talk, if we have parents that talk to kids, and we have good communication, we will avert any potential threat. I hope,
Yeah, not to making a case for putting resources student-to-student interaction in a more positive, non-violent or non-criminal or non-bullying way, and fostering more teacher-to-student relationships this way through curriculum, professional development, or working with the staff and administration and teachers that we already have, as opposed to averting it to something that does not have great documented evidence that it helps to prevent violence or crime. In fact, it obviously will raise arrests and disciplinary offenses and otherwise, because that's what they're trained to do. Right. It's like a surgeon is trained to find problems with you on the operating table, and so they do. And likewise, a law enforcement official is trained to do that. So.
I also I would be concerned as to how much training they have with students, specifically students who have an IEP or something. I did read in research that we're liable, the district is liable if the officer takes action against a student and violates that. I'm not really comfortable with spending our funds in that way either, in lawsuits like that. So
It does open up a liability can of worms, I believe. I mean, our job is really to deliberate on all aspects, and I feel like, you know, there might be an inclination to restrain ourselves in this case, right? Not to pursue an SRO, and I'm getting that feeling. I'd like to pursue greater the arguments for, so that we do a solid, fair, judicious kind of concern. So since Matt's not here, I'd like to charge Matt with coming up with, you know, a kind of pro-con analysis of this, and a little bit, and maybe present to us a case for and cases against, so that we really feel like we've thought this through.
Well, I think that's a good idea, but I think it's also the case that I know of one community member who supported the idea.
Sure.
And maybe we should get him to come and tell us why he wants a school resource officer.
Potentially.
yeah, and reading some of it, I mean, some of the arguments for it, or I don't know as they really pertain to our district, but it does foster, the idea that you start seeing your cop around, maybe students are more likely to go to police when they need help. A lot of the instances that I read about where it being useful were chatter among students about something that might be happening, and I'm not talking about a shooting event, but the more like high school related instances, like so-and-so's going to a party, or kids will be drinking underage somewhere, and that can then be communicated to law enforcement. So I could see benefits in a larger district, I think.
The case that I imagine an SRO being useful for is, you know, you have a big, I mean, there's lots of cases where they can be useful. First of all, it's always good to have a relationship with your local law enforcement. They are welcome here on campus. They do spend time on campus. The question is whether you want to house one here or not, and that's a different kind of question. And you know, issues of custody or something like that, but we are going to be going through a redesign phase of this campus to make it more secure. We are spending a lot of money in that area to create greater security on a physical level, and I think that's, you know, everyone understands that safety is a primary concern that we have. The question is whether this actually ensures safety or not, and we want to make judicious decisions about it. So
research suggests that it makes students feel less safe.
I can imagine.
And I think another, maybe like a solid way to think about it is if we really articulated what would be the goal of getting an SRO, like really for our district. Is it to prevent a mass shooting? Is it to prevent gun violence? Or is it to prevent bullying? Or is it to prevent, you know? And so once we come to those terms for ourselves, then we can decide the best pathway for increasing safety. And I think another question is, you know, we had a presentation about, you know, bullying, say, and you know, where do these instances of violence or crime or discipline occur? And they don't always occur in school in our district. They often occur in a bus or in other off-campus things. So if that is the issue for our district to work on, those types of discipline issues, then I don't know that a school resource officer who's in a campus only can really help us, right?
Yeah, something, to go back a little bit, something very important to know is that what happens is you create a memorandum of understanding between the, in our case, the sheriff's department and the school. And in that MOU, you need to articulate, so I'll just read a few things. You need to clearly define roles. And this is from somebody who has been in law enforcement. And he says one role that SRO should not play is that of enforcing school discipline. The SRO is sworn to uphold civil law, not enforce school rules. And to my mind, that's really important because we have seen in different parts of the country students getting written up or getting suspended or getting, unfortunately, hurt by an SRO because they threw a carrot at a teacher or they used used a $2 bill that was not a real bill and charged with a crime for that. And so we don't need to have we have a very warm environment where the staff and administration have been trained in DBT and lots of other methods to help de-escalate situations that are tense. And we don't need to all of a sudden criminalize things that children do.
Are there memorandums of understanding of non-armed SROs? Or they come with
I don't know.
they come with
There's a great letter actually, because Haldane just had to do this because the law changed in July. So I read through the superintendent's letter about how they went about putting together the memorandum of understanding, which is referred to updating their code of conduct primarily to make sure it linked. That had to be part of it. And also, they had to have community involvement in that process. That's stated by the new law, that every stakeholder can come and contribute to what is the role. So as you go down that road, it is an undertaking, and I do think it is one that happened after we've taken a very long, hard look at our code of conduct. For example, like if a student, I'm still kind of unclear in New York, and I know it's different in different states. If definitely illegal action is happening, can the SRO arrest the student? And it seems to be a fine line between sort of at their judgment of whether it is a school safety issue in New York State.
That's my understanding, that it is a fine line, and it really should always start with the school administrator, but should that SRO sees something happening at that point in time that he views or she views as a safety issue, then they can act. It is exactly as you say. It goes back to what I said, well trained in the beginning, and training is absolutely key. And those are more the kinds of things you'd see, in a high school, urban or suburban, but those are more high school kinds of things.
Wait, Deborah, is there a district, a K-8 district roughly comparable to ours that has an SRO?
And that was the question I was interested in. So the one K-8 I looked at quickly was Botanical Hills. They do not. I don't know of a K-8 that does. And as I said, this was an early discussion, so I haven't done homework on this. I can certainly find out, but I'm not aware of any.
Do you have any sense how the teachers and staff feel about this subject?
This really started with the sheriff's office calling. To my sense, that was not a priority for this school district.
It's not necessarily. It's nothing that came from the board.
No.
Yeah, here.
And so the question is, it really isn't for me to simply say no. It's a question that the board needs to hear and think about. And certainly it can be a question, should you want to go that route, that I could pose with the staff, but I have not.
The obvious question is, why are we talking about this, right? And I think one reason we talk about things is not because we're trying to forward a position but that it's our obligation to do due diligence to ideas that arise from the community. And when when it's our local law enforcement or the parents or repeated interest, it's our due diligence, whether we agree to disagree, to consider, you know, these issues. So I think that's where we are with it.
Deborah, in your professional experience, have you ever worked with an SRO?
Every district I've been involved with had an SRO.
And what was your
So
experience
yes,
like?
I would say that in the experiences that I've had, they were somewhat different than what you're talking about. They were state troopers who went through a complete training program that came from that organization. I know about the number of hours of training they had to do, what their role was. Their time in all of my K-12s are always spent in the high school. They really did not do anything in the K-8s. In the K-8s, we would use more of our local police to come in and talk to students, have conversations, do book reads, visit. But the SROs, in my experience, were high school set. Their positives were exactly as you heard Sarah say. They would engage students in conversations. If they knew of something happening in the community, they would start that conversation so that, and sort of get ahead of it. If they thought there was going to be something happening, a party or an event that everyone needed to know. And so they became sort of, they sort of immersed our students into that community conversation back and forth. They were, in my case, they were always required to have an office. They did place business while they were there. They walked the calls, the cafeteria. They were always armed, so I can't speak to if that's permitted or not. So in those cases, it was structured, but there was always that issue of where is that line? Because the tendency is to react when something happens. So that training came in very handy when we would find something, searches, all those kinds of things that had to happen. There really need to be school at rear and local parental. So that was something we as administrators were always trained on as well. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it was never a K-8 conversation.
And it was exclusively high school.
In my experiences,
and was it mainly about drugs? Was that the?
No, it was all kinds of things. It was sometimes students had just issues that they related to the officer and could have a conversation. It would be drugs. It would be just about anything that you can imagine a high school student would encounter. And part of that is if they went to that particular SRO officer, how do we get them? We would encourage them to maybe have a conversation with their parents, with their counselors, with their teachers. So it was part of a community event. And so, in a sense, the SROs became one of our stakeholders in our schools to help with conversations, even alerting us to when new things were coming out that maybe we need to be aware of, that we in schools aren't always. We think we're up on every single new thing that students are thinking about and talking about, but not always.
There's certain situations in which, you know, you can imagine someone being here being highly effective and engaging, you know, whether it be or being on a campus, you know, whether it be disputes in the community, domestic or otherwise, spilling onto campus, you know. At the same time, we have a pretty fast rate of response, right? Sheriffs get here pretty quick, you know, on some level.
I'm only shaking my head because I think it's just a function of the geography in our community. Right. I don't fault them in any way, but I do think that's something unique to our community in consideration.
Well, I was thinking that, Alex, you might have a view on this. The safety committee might have a view on this, right?
Yes.
Do you want to present that view?
I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to it, but I think, Courtney, I think your point is taken too, that I think if we are interested in doing if the board would like to do what it deems to be due diligence, I think I've had conversations with some of our staff that have expressed that this has been either something of concern to them And I would venture to say that it's a conversation our emergency response team will meet on Friday. And it's comprised of about 15 individuals so we have a large number from a very small staff who are committed. I have my own personal opinions on it. I will say that because I feel it's most important that the staff express.
What kind of security do we need, and and how do we need it, and why would this do this? Why would this presence actually do the thing that my just personally, my brother's involved in the military in a very serious way. Okay, this kind of thing doesn't protect you from the thing that you're afraid of. Period. And you can't afford the kind of security that you need to protect you. Period. And I can tell you that just talking to him about these things, he's like, no. So, my concern is it's not so much throwing money, which is a concern, but throwing money at a false perception, or a false concern, or a false sense of security. I want people to feel safe in their work environment, but I want that to be real too, not the false sense of security that certain things provide. So nothing is easy when making a decision about something like this. Inviting people into your community, that is to say, inviting people into your building, it can be difficult. Who you hire matters. It can give people a sense of security. It also can turn into a nightmare quickly. So it can go both ways.
What do you think is the next step? Is it another discussion, or?
I think so, yeah.
Do we just do research, or do we wait for things to come from?
I think we try to get as much input as possible.
I think one of the first steps can be Friday's meeting. It's a large group of stakeholders.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to go everywhere, but this group is representative. They've been trained on the topic of school safety and what we do, and even the wellness component. So I think that might be a place where there's time, I'm sure, to have that conversation and get some input that way. Certainly I can see where there's some K-8 districts and find out what's happening there. We may not do this in time for this grant. He did not let me know what the deadline is, but I agree we can do due diligence and make sure that funding would be there in the future if the board did make a that decision.
I mean, I take that there seems to be a consensus among this board that there's not a huge amount of enthusiasm for this. The only thing I would recommend that you do is to talk to the community member who advocated it and give them an opportunity to come here and present a case for it. Period. That's what I would do.
Well, there might be more than one.
So
if we open it up.
We can open it up, sure.
Right.
Well, there's also staff. That you may feel like I get it. I get why people want to feel secure and safe in their environment, and I understand that totally. In their work environment, I totally get that. And I'd like to hear I want to hear people out. Whether I agree or disagree in the end is a different thing. But definitely, we want to vet. We want to vet our decisions like this so that we know that we're doing the right thing. All right.
So
We're gonna
next
close
step
up.
is just I'll work with that, and Matt will be. You let Matt know.
Wait, I think Matt should not have to give the con. Maybe if Matt's really going to do any research, he could just
I think we got to his contract doing that.
Yeah.
He sent an email.
We don't normally.
He sent an email, said he said there's some good points on both sides, etc. So I just threw him out on his bus because he has the flu. Yeah.
Be careful you don't get sick.
If he's watching.
You actually
All right. Okay. Public comment. Board comment.
I have one comment in reference to the presentation we heard earlier. One thing to note was that I loved hearing from our former students of the district, and a lot of them reference foreign language, specifically Spanish, and they reference starting in 3rd grade. That is a program that was cut 2 years ago, So it is something to note that I just wanted to point out that it was of value to our students. And as we're moving into budget season, as we're looking as to how we allocate our resources, what programs we do, this was something that really made a difference in their high school experience. And I know we wrote it off as it was removed for a reason, that maybe it wasn't as effective twice a week, but clearly they're saying it was. So something to think about if this is a way we could expand the offerings below 6th grade again.
Well, the perennial question about, yes.
And that was maybe something where I would like to
We
put
could,
money
how about we,
towards the school
how about we
resource
stop
officer.
asking a question every year and actually make a decision? That might be a thing to do, right? As long as we don't like break the bank on that decision, we structure accordingly.
Okay, so I just wanted to make one comment, which is it's a little personal in that I just got back from Montgomery, Alabama, where I went to the Legacy Museum and the National Peace of Justice Monument, and I just think it's so powerful. I brought my 2 young children, 4 and 7, to see something that is describing a really deep history in our country that we're only beginning to really reckon with. And when I say that, I mean actually no one's really still reckoning with it. But I really hope that as our district moves forward, hiring new superintendent, planning and figuring out curriculum that like it is in the spirit of preparing our youth to understand history and kind of be ready to be like diverse participants in our society actually participating. So I mean, it was so moving, and
This describes the legacy of racial violence
right
in
from
the South.
chattel slavery up to now in our current incarnation in mass incarceration. So it's really, I mean, if the 8th graders could ever decide on a trip to go down
It's the
there,
one thing.
that's really powerful.
Can I get to that?
Yes, please.
I took Maya to the museum last year. And I mean, one of the facts that has stuck with me since then is that in the 1890s, the state of Alabama derived 75% of its state revenue, 75% of its state revenue from leasing convict labor. That's kind of amazing, right?
Right.
And how about can I give a movie promo?
Yes. You're in board comment. Go for it.
There's a movie that is about a story that a very powerful story. Proud to say that I did it for 60 minutes about almost 30 years ago, and it's now a movie called Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. It's really a great movie. It's playing over here in Portland.
And the book is, as always, better.
And it's tied to, it's also tied to the museum, right? In some way.
Well,
the guy who.
Yeah.
I just thought we would articulate that out. Nothing keeps someone from writing a GSEF grant, correct?
Anyone in the community can write a grant to GSEF.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And like we have classes that are pretty small.
We actually, to that point, we had Gwen last there had actually reached out to GSEC and was approved, and as a result, we'll be having performances on February 12th. So to your point too, it's a wide net that can be cast. So
we could write a GSEF grant.
Even cheaper than that. The key figure in this is a guy named Brian Stevenson, who's an attorney, who created this Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery. He's an amazing human being. And he just did an interview with Terry Gross on Fresh Air in the last couple of days. And I think every 8th grader would benefit from hearing that interview. It's an amazing interview. And it's about 40 minutes. And to understand the depth and the pervasiveness of racism in this country, it gives a very measured and very moving account. Which I can't imagine that 8th graders wouldn't benefit from hearing this interview. So just Google Fresh Air, Brian Stevenson, and you'll hear.
But of course, also the younger grades. Not even just the 8th graders.
That's true.
My 7-year-old was definitely changed. Maybe not my 4-year-old.
He needed to be changed. All right, we good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, fine, all right. I need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
You resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District adjourns to executive session to discuss negotiations regarding the architect's contract. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, and the ayes have it. And let's call it a night.